everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Sportsbook Confidential. My name is John Sullivan, and this little show here is to help you learn and grow as a sports bettor. So welcome to the FingerLakes1.com studios in Seneca Falls, New York, and let's get started. Today's the last day of opening days of baseball. Every major league team should have had their opening day after today, so we're going to spend the majority of our episode talking about baseball today, and we'll also spend a little time talking about the Final Four, and I'll have my picks at the end of the show. I have a lot of comments about the action series on Showtime. We talked about sports betting shows last week, and I think I'm going to reserve my comments till after the 4 episodes are over. Lots to say about that, but let's get started, as we always do, by updating my bankroll. And as you can see, we had another bad week. We had a bad couple of weeks. I would have to say that college basketball is not my forte. But as you look here, we had a starting bankroll of $542, and we had a bad Friday. We lost both of our wagers in hockey. We had the Coyotes, who were fighting for a playoff spot, was a loss, and the Ducks +1, also a loss. It's tough to gauge when teams that are out of the playoff hunt are actually bringing it, competitively, but it is professional sports. And then we had LSU and North Carolina, both lost badly. LSU, boy, I watched that game, and their big guys were taking threes, and I'm just saying to myself, what is going on here? Did really not like the way that ended up for them. North Carolina, I did not get to see as much of that game as I wanted to, but they struggled and trailed most of the game, and obviously they lost outright. But and then Virginia, -18 on both of those games we lost. Virginia won for us. Had a miracle overtime, and then in overtime they got the job done. So that was a profit of $17. If you do the math, there was a loss of $55 on the day, or on the week. Not very good for us, and that brought our bankroll all the way down to $487, which I believe is a low point for my bankroll on the show. So dividing by 30, as we always do, my new bet size will be $16 going forward. So we're going to have to turn things around, and I guess we're going to try to do it with baseball. We'll have the hockey playoffs coming up, but until football gets here, baseball is going to be our primary activity. And so betting on Major League Baseball, we're going to briefly talk about the types of wagers that you can make on a Major League Baseball game. So obviously, if you pick one team to beat the other team, that's a money line wager, and they offer varying odds depending on how big of a favorite, how expected and one team is to beat the other. And then you have the run line. In Major League Baseball, you can't really use a point spread. Teams are usually favored less than a run to less than 2 runs over the other, statistically. So they have, just like the NHL, they have the money line and the puck line in the NHL. So in baseball, they have the money line and the run line. -1.5 runs or +1.5 runs. And then, again, varying odds depending on how favored one team is over the other. Then, of course, you have the total runs scored between the two teams, also known as the over-under. And you also have the team total, which is just one team's expected number of runs. You could say the Yankees over 5.5 runs or under 5.5 runs they'll score in their next game. And then finally you have player props, which I don't really get involved in, but things like they're never the same every day, but things like Aaron Judge have a home run today, yes or no, and there'll be odds for each one. They have other props like runs, hits, errors, things of that nature, how many strikeouts a pitcher will have, all these varying types of wagers. The sports books make those choices. You can always ask. Some sports books will give you a line if you ask for one, but it varies from day to day which props will be available. So you might not always have the one you're looking for. But those are the various types of wagers that we have in baseball. Now, when we're talking about handicapping baseball, I have 4 topics here I want to talk about. And excuse me if I bounce all over the place, but these are all very important. And so just like in hockey, I believe the goalie matchups are very important in determining, handicapping a game, determining what line has value. In baseball, it's pitching matchups. And in baseball, the dominant pitchers, the top tier pitchers, the top 5, 6, 7, 8 pitchers in the league have their level is so much higher over the average player. And, the odds usually reflect that, but of course it depends on the competition. So I remember betting opening day this year, and it was Scherzer against DeGrom. And DeGrom, of course, the Cy Young winner last year. And both of those pitchers are elite pitchers, but DeGrom was getting, +1. The Mets were lined at +120, and I'm saying, okay, you have the best pitcher in the league, and he's getting +120. That's value, and that game did win for me. It doesn't always work that way, but that's what you're looking for. You're looking for value. You're looking for one team to have an advantage over the other, and both pitchers pitched very well in that game. The Mets were able to score a couple of runs and carry the water there. So pitching matchups are very important, and that's a primary consideration for me when I'm handicapping baseball. And then lineups, of course, who's playing that day, who's in the lineup is very important. But I want to talk for a minute about where the advantage is in handicapping with respect to lineups. Now, people will have differing opinions on this, but when the lineups will come out, a couple hours before game time. If there's if it's a 7 o'clock game, you might get a lineup at 5, 5:30, 6 o'clock. So you know exactly who's playing. However, the starting pitchers in the morning, and the lines come out very early in the morning, and they move throughout the day as bettors bet on the games, and the bookmakers adjust the lines. And there may be, in some cases, way more value betting a team before the lineups come out as opposed to after the lineups come out. Now, there's some, those of us that play daily fantasy sports, we know that, we're all egotistical micromanagers, and we want to control every aspect of our lineup. So we wait till those lineups come out so we can choose which players we want, because we know what batting order they're in, and how many at-bats they're expected to get, and who their matchup is, and all that kind of stuff. Now, when you're betting on a team to win a game, or you're betting on a total over-under, sometimes, anticipating what the lineup is going to be is going to give you a much better, a juicier number by betting before the lineups come out. There could be a player that's maybe questionable to play. He's day to day, and you make a judgment call, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon for a 7 o'clock game, and you may find yourself getting, under 8.5 instead of under 7.5, or you may find yourself getting a team at plus 130 instead of plus 110, depending on the scenario. So lineups are a consideration, and You have to. I'm a firm believer in, betting the game like their best available lineup is going to go out there, and then you can always buy off the game. For those of you who don't know what that means, is you can basically end up removing your bet by betting both sides of the game and just eating the vig or the juice. You can always buy off your game if there's a tremendous swing in what the lineup is versus what you expected it to be. So lineups are definitely a consideration. It's up to you how you want to deal with that. And then, of course, the next, and for those of us that played Stratomatic baseball as a kid or variations, micro league baseball, whatever, park factors and weather. Of course, if you play at a place like Coors Field where the teams tend to score lots of runs and the totals are usually 11 or 12 runs versus a place like, the Dodgers Stadium is considered more of a pitcher's park. I'm trying to think of what the best pitcher's park is these days. I'm not really sure which one. Everybody seems to gravitate towards shaping their parks for hitting. I think Citi Field is a pretty good pitcher's park. So those types of stadiums, you're looking at unders, you're looking at closer games, so it's less likely maybe that you're playing the run line where it's 1.5 runs. Obviously, National League has the pitcher hitting, so you've got sacrifices in play and double switches and things like that. And then you have the weather, and especially this time of year. Major League Baseball has done a pretty good job of trying to move the early games in the season to indoor and warm weather locations, but everybody, has to have their opening game in April, so there's retractable roofs now and all those types of things. So wind, obviously a place like Wrigley Field where the wind blows out or the wind blows in makes a difference in betting the over-unders. As a matter of fact, a lot of times when the wind blows out at Wrigley or they expect it's going to blow out, they won't put up the total till right before game time because they don't want people hammering it. The sports books, they're protecting their risk, managing their risk. But again, if there's rain in a game that may, if the game starts and then the rain comes in the middle of the game, that will mean the starting pitcher may not return to the game. Affects, then you get into the bullpens, and that's a whole different metric for you to figure out when you're wagering on a game. So lots of interesting concepts involved in park factors and weather. And then the last thing I want to talk about is modeling. Now, we have been, a theme running through the show has been to talk about modeling and creating a model and using statistics. If I was going to create a primitive model for Major League Baseball, I would do something probably with WAR, which is a stat called wins above replacement. You have offensive WAR and defensive WAR, and you have pitching WAR, and then you have combined WAR. Well, it's overall WAR, I guess I would call it not cumulative, but so you have your lineup. Once you know your lineups, you have the WAR stat for each player, and then you have the pitching WAR for each pitcher. So let's just assume it's an American League game, so you don't have to worry about the pitchers batting. And you come up with as a primitive model, you just add up those numbers and you kind of see how many, wins one team is better than the other. That's just a very basic, quick, off the top of my head, method to model. The model that I use is a little more complicated, but I come up with a projected run score for each team. And then that allows me to have a differential. One team is favored by X amount of runs over the other, and then a total. The teams are projected to score X amount of runs, Y amount of runs, if you add those two run projections together. And then, of course, you could bet the team totals if you wanted to because you've already got those figured out. So that's what I use. And without getting into the secret sauce, it's not super complicated, but I have, I use a variety of stats, about 4 or 5 stats to come up with my projected run totals for each team. And I include some, both the park factors and the pitching matchups in developing this. So weather, not so much. I try to keep the weather out of it because a lot of the teams play in warm weather environments, and very rarely does it affect the game. But if there is super bad weather, I'll probably just stay away from a game because I feel like my model doesn't accurately represent it. But if you're interested in building a model, we're going to get around to doing it here. We're going to have a lot of baseball between now and June, or actually May. Around Memorial Day, the CFL will start, and we'll get back to football and my strengths. But we'll talk some more about stats and modeling, and we'll try to build a model for a sport, whether it's baseball or something else. But baseball is the best sport to model, in my opinion, because it has the most available stats. It's got, you can get advanced stats for just about anything that you're looking for, and how you choose to interpret them and put them together is more art form than anything else. It's up to you. It does not, now, modeling does not necessarily mean that you are going to have an advantage over the betting marketplace. It's not meaning that at all. What it means is you get from a complete black, no picture of the game, you get an idea of where you want to be, what side you want to be on in that game, and at what odds you'll be willing to take a team. Remember, we used the example of the dartboard, and by building a model, if we throw a dart without a model, it's not close to the center, with the center bullseye being the perfect score of the game. By creating a model, we shrink the dartboard so it gets us closer to the center. So even if our model is off, we're still getting closer to where we want to be. And a completely, I'm trying to think of the right word, a model that has no relevance, statistical relevance to, what you're trying to handicap is not going to get you any closer. But it'll be very difficult for you if you study all the stats and kind of make your homebrew. It'd be very difficult for you not to improve your handicapping with the model. So that's where we're at with all that. And I guess I could talk about models for all day, but we are going to move right on to Friday, Major League Baseball, and we have afternoon baseball today. It's the last day of opening days, and I want to say that there are not that many great pitching matchups today. I don't see a lot of dominant pitchers going, so I'm not going to delve into the pitching matchups. What I'm going to do right now is go through these 12 games, and I'm going to give you what my model has for each game, and then we'll see what we got here. And we're going to start with the Dodgers and the Rockies, and we have the Dodgers at minus 128, the Rockies plus 118. LA has been an offensive juggernaut. Colorado has not, but they're finally playing at home. And I have the Dodgers favored by 0.13 runs, which is not a lot. It's almost a coin flip at that point. So there's value on the Rockies here, but plus 118 is not a great number for picking the dog in this game. I would think like at plus 125 or plus 130. That's where I would go with that game. Then we have the Reds at the Pirates, and I have the Pirates, who have very good pitching, at favored by 0.55 runs. That's pretty strong indication of a favorite. That is not a bad price for taking a favorite that the model favors that strongly. The Reds do have the potential to break out offensively. They've been very quiet. We'll see if Joey Votto has anything left in the tank this year. But like that number, there might be better plays out. I do want to say that I don't think you should. I think you need to be selective. I don't think you should limit yourself, but I usually make 2 baseball plays a day. I pick the 2 best plays I think are on the board. There may be some days I pick 3. There may be some days I pick 1. Most days baseball runs a full schedule of 15 games. And on the travel days, they go, sometimes it could be as low as 7 or 8 games. So I try to be really selective, but I'm going through the line here, and I'm showing you what I like and what I don't like. So we have the Marlins plus 140 at the Braves, minus 151. I have this game at the Braves favored by .09 runs, which is almost a coin flip. So the Marlins have been very inconsistent, and obviously they have a lot of young players and they're rebuilding. But you got to remember, even the bad teams win 60, 70 games a year. That's a really good price. If you believe that your model is accurate, that's where you're going to go. May not make my list. We'll see. The Cubs at the Brewers, plus 113 for the Cubs, minus 122 for the Brewers. I have the Brewers favored by .9, almost a full run. Very good price for that favorite, minus 122. I think there's better value on the board today, but I would not be afraid to make that bet. We have the A's plus 145 at the Astros home opener. I have the A's favored by .13 runs. Again, a coin flip, but I've got the dog as a slight favorite here, so obviously that's going to rank very high on my list of games today. And then we've got the Rangers plus 106 at Angels minus 115. We have the Rangers favored by .3 runs here. Again, you have the underdog favored. I like that. Again, not as much value as there may be in other places. So let's move on to the next set of games. Rays minus 121 at Giants plus 122. We have the Rays favored by .76 runs. Again, another favorite, but this is a road favorite. I think I'd rather take the home favorite if you're getting similar odds as I was with the Brewers. The Twins plus 135 at the Phillies minus 147. We have the Phillies favored in this game by .6 runs. That's about appropriately priced there. I don't think I'm going to touch that game. Then you have the Red Sox minus 115 at the Diamondbacks plus 107. The Red Sox have been kind of a mystery this year. Their pitching has not been very sharp. Chris Sale, for example, has velocity problems. Porcello goes today. And their offense has been very inconsistent. This game we have Arizona favored by .1 runs. That's pretty much a coin flip. There may be more value on the board there. So we have Seattle minus 121 at the White Sox plus 111. Seattle's got their new Japanese pitcher going today. Again, it's his first time through the league, so I think the league has a little trouble figuring him out, but they do have tape on him now. I have the White Sox here favored by .53 runs, and at plus 111 and at home, I really like the White Sox here in their home opener. And then we have the Padres at the Cardinals. We have the Cardinals favored by a full run, .95 runs, minus 168. Again, priced appropriately, not much value there. And then the Blue Jays plus 134 at the Indians minus 145. Toronto's been a real mess so far this year. We have the Indians favored by 2/3 of a run, .67 runs. No value there, and that game's going to be a pass for us. So that's it for baseball. And before I get to my baseball picks, We're going to take a quick look at the NCAA Final Four. And the first game is Texas Tech at Michigan State. That total is an error. I have it at 145. It's actually 132. I really like Michigan State here, minus 2.5. They are not great free throw shooting team, so I'd really like it at 2. A lot of people I respect are on Texas Tech here, but I feel like the experience, the pressure, you got to give a basket edge to Izzo and his team. So I like the minus 2 here. At 132, it's kind of like it's about appropriately lined. Maybe I would lean over there. And then Auburn versus Virginia, minus 5.5. Boy, that's a lot of points. I like Virginia to win this game. 131.5. I think this is the game to go over with. Auburn is going to try to push the tempo as much as possible. Whether that ends up being to their benefit or detriment, we'll find out. But I don't think this is a game where Virginia can hold them to 40 points. Even if Virginia gets out to a 20-point lead, you have to think Auburn's going to score 65 points. So if Virginia is 5.5 better, over is the obvious play here, in my opinion. If you like Auburn, you definitely want to bet the over. So that's how I feel about the Final Four. I like a Virginia-Michigan State title game. I like Virginia to win it all, but Michigan State, the final depends on what the odds are going to be, and we don't know yet. So, and then finally getting on to our picks for the week. I'm trying to be a little more selective. I only have 3 plays today, so hopefully we'll get back going in the positive direction. It's a long road to hoe when you're trying to dig out of a hole, but here we are. So Chicago White Sox at home today, plus 111. My model really likes them by half a run. And then Oakland A's, money line, they're slight favorites over Houston, and plus 147 is a real juicy number. So we have both of those. And then on Saturday, we're going to take the Auburn-Virginia over 131.5 at minus 107. So that's going to do it for us this week. Thank you very much for watching. And let me play the outro music for you. And we'll try to get some winners here. And we're due. So take care, everybody.